Hey, how's it going, everybody? This is Spencer Ostrowski with Delivering Sports, and today me and Kevin
Please end my suffering.
are going to do a recap. I want to keep this around an hour. I just want it to be because day two is going to be just as crazy, and I'm sure we will go back and reference a lot of day one activity.
60 minutes
Um,
or less. Let's do it.
yeah, exactly. We're gonna talk about it, but we don't want to be exhausted because we know day two is going to be full of stuff. But we wanted to get down. We just got word of the Patrick Beverly deal like literally like minutes ago. So I believe that'll probably be the last deal that goes down today. So that is what we've got today, and we're just going to kind of go over all the transactions today, some of our initial thoughts and reactions.
Kawhi just signs mid recording.
Yeah, right. I mean, sure. So knowing how weird he is, man.
All right, let's start it off. I got the list pulled up here. Kevin Durant rips
All
the
right.
hearts out of millions of Knicks fans everywhere and signs to the Brooklyn Nets on a 4-year, $164 million deal, along with Kyrie Irving and DeAndre Jordan.
See, the thing that is so crazy to me about this deal, besides the obvious stuff, I'm talking about like the unobvious thing. Like, so right after the deal came out that Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan were coming to Brooklyn, the Knicks kind of, I believe, do some damage control and saying that they weren't willing to sign him to a max deal. But then we later find out that Kevin go to Brooklyn.
What'd you say?
So right when the Kyrie, Kevin Durant, and DeAndre Jordan deal went down, the Knicks were essentially trying to do some damage control and saying that they weren't willing to give Kevin Durant max money due to his Achilles injury. But then later it comes out that Kyrie and Kevin Durant are not taking the max in order to get DeAndre Jordan on the team as well.
I don't believe that. I honestly don't.
I don't know. I mean, it's been reported, so
It seems very obviously like damage control for the Knicks. I think they just want to cover up the fact that they pitched Durant and he just wasn't interested, because that honestly that helps them save face. But I think it kind of backfired on them because especially because Katie ended up taking less than the max to sign with Brooklyn. I think there was just an oversight as far as the Knicks are concerned. There was an oversight as far as signing Kyrie Irving and DeAndre Jordan. Obviously, the Knicks already had DeAndre Jordan on roster and had the opportunity to keep him on board and kind of were like ahead of the gun with all that stuff. But I think somewhere along the way, Kyrie got lost in the shuffle as far as the Knicks' plans go, and it became more about Kawhi and Durant, and that the Knicks clearly didn't prioritize how badly Kevin Durant wanted to play with his friends. So I think that kind of was the what happened as a result.
yeah. So obviously Brooklyn isn't going to be a title contender next year, so they're projecting out for the 2 seasons after next. They'll be developing next season, but as we saw last season, with Kyrie as the best player on the team is not the ideal situation, which is obviously why they wanted to sign Kevin Durant with him, and they were able to do that. So, uh, on in the long term, Brooklyn, and as we'll get into it later, it seems like this season's winner free agency may have been the Utah Jazz, but we'll get into that later.
Um, yeah, it definitely hurts as a Knicks fan to see what has been looked at as the little brother for such a long time just completely mollywop you out of nowhere. Um, and as far as the Knicks are concerned, we'll talk about them in a few minutes here in the signings they made. But as far as turnaround for the Nets, it's just incredible, and it hurts for if you're the Knicks, but I don't view it as like a huge like fuck up in the sense of like they're a 17 win team. Uh, it would have been just like completely out of their. It would have been like landing the girl that's completely out of your league if they were able to pull this off. And the fact they aren't, I feel like no one should have expected it to happen, despite that it was like so widely believed that it would. But it is what it is, you know. And congrats to the Nets. Really, just a job well done on their turnaround. It's really commendable.
It says a
How
lot about what it means to make the playoffs. It not just make the playoffs, but make a positive team culture because like a team like Orlando made the playoffs, but no one wants to go there. what the Nets were able to do is build a team culture where they felt like they were just a piece away, essentially. And even though theoretically they're not, because we don't know what this team's going to be like, but they were able to make free agents believe that they were only two or three pieces away to coming, and people bought in. Obviously, free agents bought into that whole thing.
Yeah, and it's looking good for them. I think we can get into the grand scheme of title contention because obviously this is a championship move. Um, I'm not hugely sold on their title their not their title opportunity, their title chances as far as being able to beat the Lakers, the Jazz now, I guess, or even just other teams in the East like the Sixers who've made huge moves as well.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, when you have Kyrie and Kevin Durant to start your team around, both two players that have both won finals, it's a pretty good start to say the
Sure,
least.
sure. But then like you said, there's still the question about Durant's Achilles, and
Yeah, sure.
yeah, it's just it really kind of all depends on that.
Even if he's 75% of the player that he was before, he's still better than like 90% of the league. So you get a good player in Kevin Durant without a doubt.
Yeah. Uh,
And they also we'll do it by team, so we don't have to go back to it later. They also signed Garrett Temple to a short-term deal.
Garrett
Just a
Temple
good
and
yeah.
DeAndre Jordan.
Right. So just good. Well, obviously Garrett Temple's a good 3-and-D guy, and then DeAndre Jordan's going to get all your rebounds and be an effort guy. So two other really good signings, and of course DeAndre Jordan came just
Mm-hmm.
because Kyrie and Kevin Durant took cuts to their deal. It's a 4-year deal. They're not paying him an exuberant amount of money. I believe it's 10 million per year, so it's not awful. In year 4, maybe it's not going to look great, but again, they're going for a championship in years 2 and 3 of Kevin Durant's contract, so that's a big part of it.
All right, moving down the list, we got Kemba Walker signing a 4-year, $141 million contract with the Boston Celtics. What do you think?
A little bit of damage control, certainly for the offseason. Kemba Walker was like really excited when Charlotte just absolutely cucked him and tried to give him a shit deal to
Man
stay on a bad
was
team.
waiting
And
for an excuse to
yeah,
to leave, and they gave him the perfect reason
and
by
yeah,
lowballing the fuck out of him.
exactly. And now before we get into the Celtics, we'll just say like because Charlotte didn't do anything else today, essentially, like they didn't have any activity. They are now a team that is against the cap, and they do not have a All-Star on their team.
Yeah,
That's
they're
just a
done.
fact.
They're
So
done out
the
here.
Hornets will be the worst team in the league next year.
I have no hope for them. The young players they do have on their roster are they're decent. Like you got Bridges and you got Monk, but like they're not extremely convincing as far as like selling me on a future. It's like if the
Yeah, they
Knicks
lost Jeremy Lamb as
it's
well.
like if the Knicks just had Kevin Knox and Frank Ntilikina. Not to say that those two players like that isn't equal. Those players are equal, but like
The
it's that
same idea.
situation, the same idea, in that you like, and no one cares about that, you know.
It's horrible. So now we'll get into the Celtics, who had obviously lost. They lost Kyrie and they lost Al Horford, and they're going to lose the Morris brother as well. So they get an all-star back out of all of it. So they retain a all-star after the two they lost, which is pretty good. I
Lose
still
Terry
don't,
too.
we were talking about this earlier, and I think I bring it up all the time, but again, the trade offer was available for the for Conley to go there. It made more sense. So they could have gotten Gordon Hayward because now he's still stuck on that team, and I don't know where he fits. And they could have gotten rid of him and gotten a good point guard back, and one that I think is better than Kemba Walker as well. And they could have just given the Grizzlies their pick back. But now we're stuck in this situation. In They still have Gordon Hayward for the next 2 years, but again, they get an all-star point guard in Kemba Walker, who's obviously very excited to play there. So yeah, they'll be poised to be a good team in the East again next season.
There's something to be said for like your backup plan being essentially another All NBA point guard, which is kind of like the Boston privilege, I think. Just that
Sure, yeah.
they really just this is their essentially like their plan B, like they're almost their worst case scenario, and it's still like, oh yeah, we just probably landed the second best point guard on the market. Uh, so and for what
One
it's
who
worth,
probably fits your team better than Kyrie did. Yeah,
exactly what I was gonna say. Like getting into that, it's like Kemba Walker is very clearly a step down from Kyrie Irving as far as just the caliber of player you're getting. He's older, obviously, but like as far as just his skill set, like it's a good fit. Like he brings a lot of the good things that Kyrie brought, and I feel like you'll still be able to maximize his skill set alongside Brown and Tatum, and I feel like you get less of kind of the drama that you got with Kyrie and Kemba just seems like a more chill guy overall.
Much more quiet. Yeah, he played for he's never played with another All-Star in his entire life. So,
I mean, he still won't, but
well, Tatum will probably be an All-Star. You would imagine now that
not
he's
over RJ Barrett, baby.
yeah. So, yeah, sure. But yeah. So Boston comes out not better than they were last year, theoretically on paper, but probably
I'm
about the same count last season. After even after everything looked like it was falling apart, they kind of brought it all back together in the end.
I'm sure they're relieved to be kind of free of a lot of what brought them down last season. There was drama with Kyrie. There's drama with Terry. There wasn't drama with Al Horford. Al Horford was really good, and I'm sure they regret not being able to bring him back. But now you look at their roster. They've got Hayward, who you can still like. While he's going to be on the roster, man, and you're not going to be able to trade him, you might as well try and figure something out with him. You got Jalen. I feel like they have some work to do in kind of bridging some goodwill with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. I think Kemba Walker is a good way to make that happen. I think you can refocus on the young talent now. You have replacements for guys like Terry with Langford that they picked up in the draft. So
Yeah, definitely. So they picked up their new backup point guard.
so they'll
Two
they'll
left.
they'll be a step off from last year, I think. But I think overall, in going forward in the long term, I think they're going to be pretty. They'll be all right.
And I still actually see a Parsons for Hayward trade happening because if they really want to get rid of Hayward's contract, who still has a lot left, they can take on Chandler Parsons' contract for any that expires at the end of the season. So uh, they will be okay, as much more than I thought they would be at the end of this.
Yeah, like if you asked us like a week and a half ago, we probably would have thought like, oh, the Celtics are done out here. Like their demise is imminent, and they come out of this relatively unscathed. Not as bad as I feel like some other teams have. Just
Right.
as like
That
yeah,
was
as this postseason has gone on.
Yeah. So good for Boston.
All right, so Jimmy Butler is actually still relatively up in the air
Yeah,
on the
we have no
table.
idea. We don't know what's going to happen with
We
Jimmy
have
Butler.
a sign and trade to the Miami Heat on the table, while the Sixers and Miami look for a third team to kind of facilitate the trade. Uh, the it fell through with the Mavericks because somebody thought they were getting Goran Dragic and they weren't, and I imagine a deal falling apart because of Goran Dragic. That's just sad. And the whole Jimmy Butler thing is sad.
Yeah.
We don't have to talk too much about it because it's not final yet, but it looks like he's going to the Heat.
That will probably be part of our day two video. But yeah, as of right now, Jimmy Butler is a free agent still, and that is just the case. And it looked like it was going to actually be really good for Philadelphia, as we'll come to later, because their cap space is super fucking tight right now. And they looked like they would have been able to actually fill in their roster a little better without Jimmy Butler, but now they will not be able to. But as of right now, Philly is mainly focused on a sign and trade, and it appear with Jimmy Butler would be as well.
Um, and probably the most surprising move we have here, we have D'Angelo Russell agreeing to a 4-year, $117 million sign and trade contract, heading to the Golden State Warriors. This is fucking
A,
insane. This
a
is
very
insane.
peculiar move.
This is
And yeah, so we'll get the first part of the. We'll talk more about the Warriors because obviously I'm a Grizzlies fan, but I know they're a very small team, so not everyone's going to want to hear about it. We'll just talk shortly about it to make this trade possible. The Grizzlies will receive Andre Iguodala and a very lightly protected first round pick from the Golden State Warriors. It's obviously a very good move for this team. What I would imagine is they're going to rest him for the first half of the season, trade him at the trade deadline to a playoff contender, which would make a lot of sense for the team. So it's a good move for the Grizzlies. I know no one wants to probably hear about it except Memphis fans, but at the end of the day, it's a very solid move for this team who just isn't going to pay anybody for the rest of the season. Obviously, there's two rookies, and they pick up a guy who can teach these young guys about winning, and then go off to a team that he wants and make him happy.
This doesn't make any sense to me in the short term or the long term, really. Um, I thought that the whole reason you did this was to get Durant's bird rights, and what I'm reading here doesn't say anything about those. So as far as we know, it's still a 4-year deal for Durant. And as far as like, and then you look at the Warriors, like this doesn't really even make sense for them either. Like it seems like, how is this different from like, I no disrespect to D'Angelo Russell, how is this different from Steph Curry and Monte Ellis in your backcourt?
And it's really crazy, man. Like we were talking, when Klay Thompson comes back, which he probably will, like midway through the season, on some capacity, he's going to have to guard small forwards, like i.e. LeBron James and all these other Kawhi Leonard. Like that's going to be his task mainly, and that's not really what you want a guy who just came off a torn ACL to have the job to do.
Especially that, and he's going to generally be smaller than most of those guys. Most of those guys are in the 6'8",
Like a
six.
defender, like he has been. He's an all NBA defender like type of guy, but not you gotta
When
like
he's
it's
guarding
torn ACL.
guards.
It's got to be there. You have to. That has to be on the back of their minds in terms of like load management for in terms of the rest of his career. It's a bad injury. It's not the worst one, but it's still bad, and it's not something you want to stress more.
I mean, yeah, you can fully recover from an ACL and be all right as far as just like for the future. But if he's gonna come back next season at some point next season and start guarding small forwards, guys who are in the 6'8" to 6'10" range, and he's 6'7" at best, that's a scary sight, and it's just you demand a lot more from him physically, and I just question the fit of having I honestly I'm waiting for like the notification that they flipped him to any of these other teams that are interested in D'Angelo Russell, because it doesn't make sense from a fit perspective. It really
Not a
doesn't.
fit perspective, and now they're going to have to get rid of Draymond Green because they're paying him
Exactly.
max money, and they will not. Draymond Green's obviously he's not going to get a max deal, but he's going to want more than what the Warriors could possibly offer him with 3 max contracts on their team salary now.
That's what I'm saying. So if you're on the hook for D'Lo for $30 million per, where does that leave Draymond? Draymond has, I regardless of what like people say about him or like whatever your opinion on him may be, warrants a hefty paycheck for his contributions to this Warriors team. His skills are very clear cut and like they are on display on this Warriors team, and you see very clearly what he brings to this team and how he keeps it together, and that's going to warrant a much larger salary than what he's on right now, very close to that max salary. And
Yeah, and now you just have exactly. Now you just have this weird like 3 guard combo that just makes you wonder how it's going to work, really.
so
And
that's
and you think you're flip him, but how easy is it going to be to
so
flip a kid who's making 30 million a year?
so that's what I'm saying is like if he drops off even the slightest bit from this last year, which is a very real possibility considering his usage from last season, his usage just to get to 21 points and 7 assists. If there's any kind of drop off there, he's making $30 million. It becomes a much harder contract to trade. And when it comes down to making that decision, it's like, oh, are we even going to be able to trade D'Lo, and free up that space for Draymond, or if they just kind of just pigeonhole themselves in this situation?
It's a very perplexing move. I think it's definitely the weirdest move that we had gotten reported all day.
I'm watching this one very closely, man. I have to feel like they're going to try and flip him or flip somebody. This feels like a very impulsive move by the Warriors.
Yeah, and they lose Andre Iguodala, obviously, who's a big part of all those championship teams, and give up a first-round pick just to get him, and they're paying him max money, and more than any team was projected to pay him as well, which is just another layer of this that's just is weird.
Weird stuff, man. Weird stuff. Let's move on. Al Horford agrees to a 4-year, $109 million contract. The Philadelphia 76ers was previously reported that they were going to try and facilitate some kind of sign and trade, and do some funky accounting to keep Al Horford in Boston,
Nah.
but he ends up just walking away. I heard that there's a $97 million guarantee on this deal, with the remaining $12 million coming in incentives for like championships and stuff like that. Because obviously, you add Al Horford to this team, and they immediately become title contenders, more so than they were last year. Very, very good move for the Philly. I think this makes them the scariest team in the East right now. Right
Yeah,
now, heading into the 2019-2020 season, I like the Sixers coming out of the East.
yeah, it's very possible because they keep Tobias Harris. We might as well clump this in all together.
Sure.
Give a max deal. It seems like a lot of money for Tobias Harris when you really say it out loud. And their starting lineup is projected to be absolutely massive as well.
Big
But
boys.
yes, on paper it's good. But then you're gonna have to trade these contracts eventually when you sign Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid to max contracts. So
And B's locked up.
yeah, so when Ben Simmons is gonna definitely market max money. So
they're negotiating with Simmons right now, and they can go over the cap to sign him because they have his bird rights. So as far as their
so yeah,
cap
I mean obviously on
situation,
paper
I
they're
think it's
yeah.
fine.
So yeah, on paper they're good. They're like dominant. I just having as big of the backcourt or front court over of Joel Embiid and Al Horford it's really big and it's very unnatural. So, but it projects to stay well because Al Horford's a great defender, both on the perimeter and a good 3-point shooting person, and it kind of covers the loss of JJ Redick, who because in the beginning of free agency, like all these 76ers were looking to leave, like Jimmy Butler and JJ. So now they retain a little bit of the 3-point shooting back with Al Horford and retain a good defensive lineup as well.
If offensively, what becomes of this is that Al Horford shoots more threes and Joel Embiid shoots less threes, then I think the Sixers may win the title next year, because like that's exactly what you need. Embiid, though proficient, not proficient, but though capable of shooting and making 3-pointers, does it far too often and at far too low of a clip to make it sustainable and kind of just make it a part of that game plan. And then Al Horford, you were kind of hold on, Shams tweet. Reggie Bullock signed to the Knicks. There we go. That's who I wanted. We'll talk about that in a second, but that's who I wanted. Go ahead and talk about Al Horford for a second.
Yeah, Al Horford is obviously a very good player, and they signed him to quite a bit of money. They seem like they're paying a lot of guys. I don't know how the rest of the roster will fill out. You would hope shooters because that was a big problem for them last year. They got rid of Markelle Fultz, which is a pretty big deal, but we'll see what the rest of the roster fills out to be. But starting lineup is obviously going to be quite good. Tobias Harris was a good 3-point shooter last year as well. So yeah, as long as they can keep their 3-point efficiency close to 35%, I think this team will be good. We'll just see how Ben anything past a 3 centimeter, 3-inch jump shot or their hook shot, or whatever you want to call it in the post.
He needs some kind of spot up shot
Anything.
for this to even work, and he's young. There's still his profile and identity as a player is not written. So like I'm saying, the defensive front court in Philly is just going to be absolutely nightmarish.
Mm-hmm.
They just defensively overall they project to just be just a hell of a team to deal with. Tobias, obviously great perimeter defender. Ben Simmons can give you defense at all three levels. I'm still kind of wondering who their shooting guard's going to be. You think about Zaire Smith coming off the Jones fracture injury, I believe, that made him miss his potential rookie year. So you think about him immediately when it comes to their starting shooting guard, especially since JJ Redick's headed to New Orleans. It looks good for Philly. I don't think Jimmy Butler's who you wanted to commit to long term. And if you have Tobias Harris, and you think that that's like he'll be your guy to help you like on your championship run, and go ahead and pay for him. A lot of it's a lot an overpay for most people. I don't think it's an overpay for Philly in this situation. I think he fits really well there, and it's going to be like a key part of their championship run.
Yeah, they're definitely going for one next year. It's pretty wide open, obviously, with Kevin Durant being out and Klay Thompson being out maybe for the entire season. Every team's scrambling to make a championship roster because this could be anyone's year.
Yeah, the effectively has been balanced out. This may be outdated by this time tomorrow. It may be outdated to say
Yeah,
that the NBA has been pretty balanced out at this point, where it's kind of wide open.
exactly.
Klay Thompson agrees to a 5-year, $190 million contract. The Warriors. We kind of talked about Klay a little bit. He'll be fine. ACLs are kind of nothing for guards, especially a guy like Klay who he doesn't he doesn't move in the traditional sense of a shooting guard. He does move, but not in that traditional sense. Like it's a lot of off ball stuff. It's not a lot of like hard dribble moves and stuff like that. It's just a really unfortunate injury at a really bad time. It just really sucked to see it happen to him, but I'm very glad he still got paid.
Yeah, no, he deserved it. Someone was going to give him a max deal if it wasn't the Warriors, obviously. So he would have gotten it one way or another.
Yeah, that's really all you really need to say on Klay. We talked about the potential fit issues with D'Lo going forward, so we'll see how that plays out. Chris Middleton returning to the Bucks on a 5-year, $178 million contract with the Milwaukee Bucks. Again, another thing. It's like, what do you like? He's earned it. Like when you talk about Klay Thompson, you talk about Chris Middleton. I think they're in the same tier. Obviously, Klay Thompson's one of the greatest shooters of all time. Chris Middleton is just like he's I think behind Klay the most consistent shooter and just consistent player in the NBA right now.
Yeah, they got Chris Middleton back, and they kept Brooke Lopez obviously, and signed Robin Lopez. They kept the core of the team together. They obviously lost Malcolm Brogdon. They weren't going to have the cap space to sign him in any case, I believe. So it ended up working out for them because I believe they were able to do a sign and trade for Brogdon, maybe not. But at the end of the day, they kept the team that they got that big run in, and this team is all going to depend on if Giannis Antetokounmpo can make the next step forward because that's the big difference.
But yeah,
They lost the playoffs because Giannis Antetokounmpo was not good enough, not because the team was not good enough.
yeah, that's he's got to make those strides and those improvements as an MVP. You know, you're the MVP. Um, yeah, it really wasn't on Middleton. Middleton plays his role to perfection. He kind of always does, and that's why he got paid. That's how it goes in the league. You have your role, you play it well, and you get paid. So congrats to him for cashing out. He is well deserved. Next, we have Kristaps Porzingis agreeing to a 5-year, $158 million contract with the Dallas Mavericks. Go ahead, Spence.
Well, not projected to ever play an 82-game season, but neither was Kawhi last season, and they won a championship. Not to say they're on the caliber of the same player, but with load management, you would imagine that a player like Kristaps Porzingis could be a very big contributor. If he does end up having injury problems for the rest of his career, it's obviously a bad deal. But again, teams have had to kind of are getting down to a science of load management for injury-prone players, and certainly not like it was when Derrick Rose was playing. So things look better for Kristaps Porzingis, and he's always projected to play with a very talented young man in Luka Doncic. So it could be good or it could be disastrous. It really is a move they had to make because they traded for him, so they weren't going to let him walk.
Yeah, Porzingis was in a strange situation, just leaving New York and making his essentially like if the Mavericks paid any kind of attention, which I'd hope they would in trading for him, if they paid any kind of attention to how his exodus from New York, he made his intentions very clear. He wanted that max deal. He didn't want to get cheaped out on, and he was willing to do literally whatever it takes, including sitting out for an entire year to make it happen. So he gets what he wants. I think it's huge risk for Dallas in that there's no contingencies for if he's injured or anything like that. There's just $158 million in guaranteed money to a guy who has a growing list of injury issues on top of the huge ACL issue that he just missed an entire season from. That's a red flag to me already. It's not sour grapes that he left as a Knick. I respect and admire his game still. It's just the injury stuff is what really concerns me with him. He seems to have bought in with Dallas's vision. to the point where there were rumors of him signing the qualifying offer even when he got to Dallas. But props to them for being able to convince him to lock it down long term. And in a vacuum where you get the guy and he's healthy, uh, Doncic and Porzingis it's a formidable young core, and it's something that I think once they start playing together, free agents will be very, very interested in. So I see why they had to do it. I still think it's a huge roll of the dice for them.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, again, it was a calculated risk they had to take because they traded a lot for him.
Of
They
course,
couldn't
yeah.
just let him walk.
Yep, and so now we have Nikola Vucevic, 4 years, $100 million to return to the Orlando Magic. This is the most surprising thing to me, not in the sense of like, oh, the move itself came as a surprise, just like the entire Nikola Vucevic just saga this past season has just been. I can't believe that this is all happening. I'll let you go here in a second, but like just the whole thing with that drafting Mo Bamba 5th overall, and then Vucevic heading into the contract year, just going completely crazy, playing absolutely out of his mind, like Enes Kanter on steroids kind of stuff, and propelling the Magic to an 8th seed in the playoffs, where they ultimately, or were they the 8th seed or the 7th seed? Regardless, a low tier playoff seed, ultimately getting dealt with very quickly by the Raptors. This move is indicative of kind of just a very strange confidence in a team that kind of seemed to have overachieved and made the playoffs. And I don't think running it back is the best idea, but it seems to be exactly what they're doing here.
Yeah, it's rewind time for the Magic, and I don't think it's a good idea. I don't. There's not really much to say about it. They're just bringing back everyone who they had last season, because of course they signed Terrence Ross to like a $50 million deal. I don't know, man. I just work here. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, it's just I don't think this will play. Like, I think the chance that they get a return on this $100 million is very, very low. I don't think it's going to go anywhere for them, and it really like starts to the concern for Mo Bamba starts to grow within me, and I'm kind of worried about what their long term plans are going to be for him. Because it seemed like they were like drafting him was like, okay, here's our centerpiece, and now we're going to be on the verge of kind of just starting this whole thing over. But like, are they gonna like re-sign DJ Augustine now? Like, what's gonna happen now? I don't trust
Yeah,
this.
and now Mobamba kind of stinks.
I mean, yeah, he never really got a chance. Like he got his rookie minutes, and then Vucevic started going crazy, and like, you really can't justify not playing him, especially if he ultimately got them into the playoffs. So regardless of how good or bad Mo Bamba was in his first season, I didn't ever really think he got a chance to prove himself to be anything more than what his numbers said this past year. But like, he didn't really ever get the chance, and I start to wonder how that like affects his standing with their front office and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Mo Bamba on the move in the imminent future.
I don't know. I don't. They weren't Atlanta Magic or have been a mess for a very long time, and I
I don't
think
think
this kind
this.
of goes
Yeah,
along
this doesn't
in the
really.
last. They had a chance to move on from all the shit that they had kind of gotten themselves into, and maybe get something out of it, and now they're back to square one.
Yep, I don't get it. Jamal Murray agrees to a 5-year, $170 million contract extension with the Nuggets. We didn't really talk too much about this, but what do you think?
He wasn't going to take less, and a team was going to pay him that much, so they had to do it. And he's pretty good. Has a few maturity problems, but again, it's a calculated risk you have to take because this team was very good as a game from away from going, to the semifinals of the Western Conference.
That's a lot of money, man. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, I mean he's a guard who plays good defense and is a good 3-point shooter. So it's a rare commodity, really.
I just feel like your ceiling's kind of capped with a guy as your point because he's their point guard. Like he runs their point, and he kind of just has so many shortcomings at that position. So I feel like he's approaching the status of like, oh, this is kind of who he is. And unless he kind of just shows any kind of like serious improvement as far as his facilitating skills are concerned, I'm concerned about. I mean, obviously, it's like he's gonna be he's a very very good player. He's in the upper tier of players in the entire league. But like, what's the end game? You know,
Championship.
I would hope so. Like, if they do, they believe that Jamal Murray can be their championship point guard.
Yes.
Apparently, I guess I'm not. I guess I'm just not as sold as on him as others are. Apparently, those in the Nuggets front office are. So that is that on that. And let's talk about Harrison Barnes now because holy shit, Jeff Schwartz strikes again, baby. 4 years, $85 million for the saxophone playing boy.
It's the Kings. Right when you think they're going, they pay Harrison Barnes $20 million a year. That's what this comes out to.
I thought they were done with this, man. I thought they were going to be a normal team.
Nah, it's the Kings, man.
It's crazy. This is so much money. And for what? Like there's no chance he plays like an $85 million player next year.
And I don't know, man. It's
I don't have anything to say. Like everything that's been said about Harrison Barnes and as in regards to a huge contract has already been said when Harrison Barnes signed his last huge contract. What?
No one was going to pay him $80 million. I can certainly tell you that.
I don't even know why he's still like why then the Kings kept him. Like I thought like the whole reason you trade for him was because his contract could come off. What's the deal?
What's the deal with airline food?
What's the deal with Harrison Barnes, man?
I guess he's a fan favorite and they wanted to bring him back. I don't know, man.
Dude, how was he a fan? He was there for like 20 games.
But the fans loved him.
I don't know, man. This reeks of a like I thought the Kings were kind of moving on and trying to be more of a progressive team, but this kind of just a big WTF. Let's move on. That makes me sad. Marcus Gasol exercises $25.6 million player option with Toronto Raptors. Duh. That's really all you need to say about that.
That's basically it, right?
Just won a title. $25 million.
He's not giving up $25 million.
Let's go on. Paul Millsap. This is strange. Paul Millsap has his $30 million team option exercised by the Denver Nuggets. Why?
They just wanted to bring their team back, and they're hoping that Michael Porter will get that piece.
Dude, like
I really liked the defense last season, and it's only for one more year. So
when you look at the playoffs, though, like he kind of like was not a huge factor. As far as my memory is concerned, if I'm wrong, please correct me. But I didn't really remember Paul Millsap as a factor.
No, he was pretty good in the playoffs actually, and they like the leadership that he brings. And they're obviously not going to re-sign him after this season. That money's probably going to go to Gary Harris. So there wasn't anyone who's going to replace him really to that caliber either.
I guess, man, if they feel like they can't spend $30 million elsewhere and in a better way, then more power to them. And I hope it pays off for them. But Brook Lopez, and what is very surprising to me, gets a 4-year, $52 million deal.
Yeah, we had pretty much mentioned that, and that they were looking to bring their core team back together, and they were able to do that. And now they're just hoping that Giannis takes another step forward.
I mean, yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And although what's a little surprising to me is the length of the deal. The salary, I think he would command that salary, especially, Brook has shown people the last 2 years that he's still a more than serviceable center in the modern NBA, especially with how proficient he is as a shooter. So this makes sense. I question the length a little bit, but if that's where the Bucks think their championship window is, then it makes sense. If they want to
Jonas Valanciunas set the market for centers.
Sure.
And it essentially came off of that. After Jonas was reported early on for the 3-year 45, Brook Lopez was going to command more money than that. So, and he did.
Well, good. All right. JJ Redick, 2 years, $26.5 million to, the Pelicans. Great move. Great move.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's the
One of two great
Pelicans
moves.
needed.
One of two great moves the Pelicans made today.
Yeah, the Pelicans are looking to surround Zion with shooters because obviously his greatest deficiency is his ability to shoot it from the outside. So they're looking to take as much pressure away from Zion Williamson his rookie season as possible, and this is one way to do it. And obviously, had cap space this season, so JJ is not going to turn down $26 million because he wasn't projected to make that much money in free agency anyways.
Yeah, hit the nail on the head there. I think if anything, this kind of indicates how they feel about Lonzo Ball at this point in time. Looks like they're going to be trying to bring him off the bench, I guess.
Yikes.
Uh, sure. I think why not do that while you're trying to figure everything out. JJ's good for this team. I don't really know if they're gonna focus on winning now or kind of seeing where they are at, because this is a 2-year deal. So I think maybe it would indicate that they're kind of looking more towards a longer term, maybe feeler out kind of year with this, trying to see where everyone is, and then maybe next year you can go all in. But I think it's a good deal. I think it's a good pickup for the Pelicans.
Yeah, whenever you get a sharpshooter like that, it's usually not a bad thing.
Yeah, exactly, and especially on a pretty team friendly salary. If you get him for less than $15 million, I think that's a good. So good on JJ Redick, headed to the Pelicans. DeAndre Jordan, 4 years, $40 million with the Brooklyn Nets. Just absolute ski mask. I can't believe he got this deal. That's the Kevin
The
Durant difference
yeah,
right there, man.
yeah, the length is probably the most surprising part. $10 million
ten
years isn't
million
too
dollars
much.
isn't crazy for DeAndre Jordan, but for 4-year contract is pretty insane to me. Um, I don't really know what to say about this. He's not really. Do they start him over Jarrett Allen? I don't know.
I think it's just kind of maybe a matchup to matchup type of thing for sure.
It definitely does seem like a thing. It's like the whole thing around it was that they got DJ to try and help strengthen their chances to get Durant, and it worked. It seems like so. If they wanted to pay $40 million for that, I feel like that's worth it. So, good on DeAndre Jordan for getting a 4-year contract in this day and age. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just they're going for the next 3 seasons, and that's all they're focused on right now. They're trying to get that window in as hot as possible.
And effectively, if what we're hearing is true, like they really only will have 2 seasons for this window to kind of. They have this 2-season window to kind of win a championship, because you look at KD, he's going to spend that 1 year rehabbing. Then you have the 2 years and the following 2 years, and then potential opt out in that fourth year for both Kyrie and Durant. So depending on how that goes, you may be looking at Kyrie opting out, you may be looking at Durant opting out. So I think you got to try and maximize those 2 years while you can, and more power to them if they want to try and win a championship in 2 years. They have a decent chance. I don't think they have the best chance.
I mean, yeah, I mean they got the two biggest free agents. They try to bring along with them, and they have to take a little bit of longer years than they probably wanted to. But they got the team that they wanted to assemble, and we'll see what they do of it.
All right, Mirotic. We don't have to talk about this too much. Mirotic is going back to the EuroLeague because they offered him a big bag, a lot of money.
Get your coin, King. I mean, that's all I got to say about that, really.
I mean, yeah, it's like, oh, why is Mirotic going to play in Barcelona? It's like, no, because they're giving him a shit ton of money. So that's
Right.
that.
What if he would have made the NBA? He'll probably come back to the NBA after he's done.
Probably. Happy
Money.
trails to Nikola Mirotic. Was never the same after Bobby Portis, the newly anointed New York Knick, punched him in the face. Derrick Rose, 2 years, $15 million contract with the Detroit Pistons. Why are we still giving Derrick Rose contracts? Why?
Because it's Detroit, man. It's Detroit, brother.
So he's just gonna start now? Like Reggie
Yeah, I
Jackson's done?
guarantee you he will.
Reggie
I
Jackson's
fucking
just
promise
done.
you he is. I promise you.
All right, let's move on. Fuck that. Jonas, 3 years, $45 million, returning to the Memphis Grizzlies. It's a good deal.
Grizzlies made two good moves by taking on Andre Iguodala and signing Jonas to about what he's worth. Absolutely, certainly a fan favorite. the Grizzlies are more of a cultural team than they are a basketball team, in the sense of like how the fans look at the team. And he fits the whole like city. He didn't think he would, but that's how a lot of players are when they come to the Memphis Grizzlies. And yeah, they got him on a fairly, certainly not untradeable. Not that I think they'll trade him, but in the case they ever had to, I think they could. And he'll be good for John Morant. He'll have a pick and roll partner to go with.
Yeah, I think teams that are bad, and we'll get into this kind of sentiment later on. Teams are bad and kind of don't have much to offer, like older veterans or even skilled veterans that are still have something to offer to the league. They have to pay a premium. The bad teams have to pay a premium for those guys just to get that veteran experience around their young guys, because they could easily take less money and go play for contenders because their services would be much more elicited on those contenders. So I think this is what you kind of get. Not that you're paying a premium for Jonas Valanciunas, but I think the opportunity would be there for him to take less money on a team that has a better chance of going deeper into the postseason. But this is good for the Grizzlies in that they get someone who is above 25 years old. Like it's all kids on Memphis right now, and they kind of need that guiding veteran presence right now. They still have CJ Miles and stuff like that, but this guy, you have Jonas in specifically to kind of mentor Jaren a little bit as well to help facilitate his growth. And all around, I think it's a good signing. It's a good signing on court. It's a good signing as far as their chemistry, and it's a good signing for, as far as helping their young core goes. So good job to Memphis.
Yeah, this team would be just fucking wild to watch next season because they have a bunch of players that people are probably going to want to trade for, like, i.e., it's probably CJ Miles, who was pretty good for them last season. Projected 40% 3-point shooter, which was obviously always valuable. Avery Bradley, who teams are already interested in. Just a bunch of guys, and Andre Iguodala, who teams are going to want to trade for. The
There are
team
certainly basketball
is
players on
doing
the
well
Grizzlies.
to gain assets, especially starting with the Mike Conley trade. So they've had a very good offseason for a small market team with that.
Yeah, and they're following the blueprint of what you should do when you're bad and just are trying to grow a young core. They're following the blueprint perfectly, acquiring assets, getting players on the team that can help your young core, facilitate the growth of your own core. I think they're doing a good job. Terrence Ross, 4 years, $54 million, returning to the
We
Orlando
talked about the
Magic.
Magic. I'm not fucking talking about the Magic anymore.
Yeah, there's literally nothing I can say that it isn't exactly what we just said with Mirotic. This is why are you running it back on a 7th seed team? Anyway, Alfarico Minu agrees to a 3-year, $29 million contract with the Orlando Magic. I'm not sure what this does for them. I'm really not. That's all I can say about that too. Like I'm not really sure like what's the end game with that. So, yep, the Magic.
Tell them to bring me my money.
Ricky Rubio agrees to a 3-year, $51 million contract with the Phoenix Suns. The Suns
Suns
get their
waited
point guard.
fucking decade to sign a point guard.
It sucks.
It's pretty good. I mean, why not?
Ricky Rubio probably coming off of his best season as a pro, just as far as his game, shooting, defense. A lot of that stuff was elevated in Phoenix, or in Utah. So you wonder if he can kind of bring that to Phoenix, can kind of elevate them because, by all accounts, Phoenix should be good. They have good players on their team. It's just they're just not, and it's very strange.
Yeah, Ricky Rubio could elevate them to another level because he can actually facilitate the ball. Like they tried Devin Booker in the whole James Harden role, but it didn't work.
Yeah, it's just not. That's not his lane. And hopefully, you get a guy, Ricky Rubio. He is a good passer. Like that's what his primary skill was coming into the league. So, I'm just not sold on anything Phoenix does ever. They could draft Michael. They could draft LeBron James tomorrow, and I'd be like, they could sign LeBron James tomorrow, and I'd be like, oh, let's wait and see.
Exactly.
So, good luck to the Phoenix Suns. This looks like a good deal on paper. I will wait and see for how it improves their play. This was the other thing we were talking about. We were forgetting like someone else signed to the Kings, but and we couldn't remember. It was Trevor Ariza, 2 years, $25 million.
Right.
Why?
Yeah,
Why?
it's the Kings, maybe. The Kings
Why?
are back. The Kings are back.
What is this? Trevor Ariza's fine. I don't know why this is.
Time for the Kings, man.
Why? I just want someone to explain to me why.
Explain it to me.
He's fine. Just like, what's their timeline?
They're going for it this year, man.
Because like Cauley Stein is gone effectively. He, or at least he doesn't want to be there, and someone would have to massively overpay for him to not like for I guess Sacramento not to match because I think they appreciate what he did last year. But it's just like, what's their timeline? What's the plan? Do they think like De'Aaron Fox is ready and then they're surrounding him with guys that they think they can help him? If so, why is Harrison Barnes one of the, like why do they think Harrison Barnes is one of those guys? I get Trevor Ariza. Why like Harrison Barnes? I'm done talking about the Kings. They're making my head hurt. Let's talk about Malcolm Brogdon, a player who's actually good at basketball. 4 years, $85 million for the Pacers in a sign and trade. Indy sends a first round pick, 2 future seconds to Milwaukee as part of a sign and trade. This on paper looks like a really expensive like deal for Indy, but one, it's the going rate for a point guard, like a worthy starting point guard in the league, I think. And then Malcolm Brogdon's really good, and I think this kind of just caps off just an overall very impressive offseason for the Pacers, despite losing one of their best players.
They lost Bogdanovich and Thaddeus Young, so they do get a good point guard.
I think they've done a
Point
real
guard,
good.
but
They've
they
done
lost two valuable players for the team.
Yeah, but I think they've done a good job reconciling overall. They still got T.J. Warren. I think they got someone else as well. Escaping my mind right now, but
Yeah, they get T.J. Warren and Brogdon, so
Brogdon, yeah.
certainly not terrible. Now they didn't become a worse team per se. It should be good for them. Is essentially what I'm trying to say. If I'm going to say it as clear as possible, it should be good for them.
I think the only thing that dampens their future going forward is just all the cap they have tied up in Miles Turner, just a guy who just does not seem to be as good as what they're paying him to be. So that's my biggest question mark with the Pacers going forward. Obviously, a very good team.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to make a championship team with that guy's contract on the books.
Unless he just gets a lot better at basketball.
I'm not buying it.
Sure. Bojan Bogdanovic, just talked about him. 4 years, $73 million with the Utah Jazz. That guy played himself into that contract, and I respect it. And the Utah Jazz are looking absolutely stacked as a result.
The Utah Jazz should be favored as the finals.
As of
as of right now, today,
June
before
30th,
Kawhi Leonard moves,
11
the Utah Jazz should be favored to win the NBA finals.
As of June 30th, 11:21
Yes.
p.m.
As
Pacific
of right
time.
now, the finals will be the Utah Jazz and the Philadelphia 76ers. As of right now, today.
Sure. It's just they're stacked at pretty much every position now. They have
Their defense is going to be stifling.
Every player at each position in their starting rotation is just brings something different to the table that is just kind of scary to think about when you're an opposing team. Mike Conley is giving you two-way. He's giving you two-way action as a point guard. Really good facilitator, passer, shooter. Can be your lead scorer if you need him to be on any given night. Donovan Mitchell, obviously, star potential. Now you have Bogdanovich, just a scoring machine. Now you look at Joe Ingles possibly moving to the 4. His versatility on defense and then his three-point shooting. Obviously, he's a lethal sniper in the league. And then you got Gobert coming off his second stolen Defensive Player of the Year award. And he's you know what he's bringing to you on the defensive side, and he's pretty good rim runner as well. So the Jazz are looking indeed quite scary.
Oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hey.
Yeah, my fucking microphone became unplugged.
That's rough. All right. Did you want to give your thoughts on Bogdanovich?
Yeah, I did, but my fucking microphone died. Or it became like, yeah, I was just saying that, they have a very intense defensive lineup, and obviously now their three-point shooting is quite incredible with Ingles, who's one of the best three-point shooters in the league, and now Bogdanovich, who's a very good scorer. And you have a very good defensive center, obviously, in Rudy Gobert. So they're the favorites to win the NBA Finals right now.
I wouldn't say they win the NBA Finals, but let's speculate. We can speculate that on another time. Who do I want to talk about? A lot of these guys whatever. Thad Young, 41 million, 3 years to the Bulls. That's fine. Whatever. He's
Sure.
good.
Bulls be like,
Yeah, Tobias, 5 years, $180 million return to the 76ers. We kind of talked about this
yeah,
already.
we talked
Like,
about the 76ers, yeah.
if that's what you want to do with your money, or not your money, but that if this is the identity you want for your team, uh, go ahead and pay Tobias that money. Shout out to him because he turned down that 4 year $80 million deal with the Clippers. I think a year ago, and has made himself $100 million more over the course of the year. So good for him.
Not bad.
Um, the Knicks, 3 years, $63 million to land Julius Randle after obviously striking out on Durant and Irving and likely Kawhi Leonard. They get a guy that they have kind of been targeting for the past couple weeks now. Um, I'll let you go first on this.
Yeah, I'm trying to piece it all together here because they strike out on Kevin Durant. And if first you get Julius Randle, it's like, okay, he's a good young player. That's pretty good. But then you sign Taj Gibson and it gets a little murkier. And then you sign Bobby Portis and it gets even more murkier. So I don't know. I think the Knicks really did are kind of going after everything. I think they should be focusing more on trying to do what the Grizzlies did and take on contracts and get picks. But it seems like they're trying to get people, but they shouldn't really be.
Um, so first I'll talk about Randall. I think he's great. I've been wanting to him since he was a free agent last year to try and pair with Porzingis and try to have that going on in the front court. He checks all the boxes as far as offensively, good scorer, good shooter, capable passer, especially in the half court, like finding the open man, capable of getting you that triple double. So I I think it's a great signing as far as like the player you're getting at the value you're getting him at for the length, especially if it's if the third year is an option like we're hearing about. Um, when you look at the rest of the signings, they get Taj Gibson, 2 years, 20 million. They get Bobby Portis on like 2 years, 31 or something like that. And now Reggie Bullock, 2 years, 21. There's a very clear pattern here. They're getting guys who they can kind of shed for next year's for 2021 free agency. So that seems to be they're kind of putting that on their crosshairs. I'm not sure I agree with it. I think they should be focusing more on kind of accumulating some assets through taking on those bad contracts. But I also don't hate what's going on here. These guys are serviceable NBA players. Gibson probably on the lower end of the spectrum as far as the players we were talking about just now. We can talk about the rest of the guys that the Knicks signed. Julius Randle, I think I think he has all-star potential still at 24 years old, especially in the East. After coming off a 21-9 and 3.5 stat line for last season with the Pelicans, it's a good pickup. And I think as far as like if your focus right now in the immediate is to get a guy around RJ Barrett who can alleviate the immediate pressure he's going to get, because he's obviously going to have a heavy role in the offense. That's what you draft him number 3 overall for. I think that's a good move. And I think if they had made moves like this with Porzingis, I think getting him a guy like Julius Randle would have been, would have won a long way as far as goodwill. And we talk about Taj Gibson. Obviously, he's on the lower end of the spectrum when we talk about these free agents and the guys that the Knicks ended up signing. Still a vet, still a guy who can offer a lot of wisdom to kids like Mitchell Robinson and Kevin Knox, who are going to be playing in the front court position. I don't expect him to get heavy minutes. I also expect this to be a team option for the second year so the Knicks can get out of it if it really doesn't work out that well. A lot of people talk about it being like bad allocation of cap, but I don't really agree with that. And I think the year-to-year salary is less important right now than the length of the contract. And if the length of these contracts don't end up being more than 2 years, I don't really have a huge issue with it. So you look at Taj Gibson in that sense. You look at Bobby Portis in that sense as well. Bobby Portis is actually a good player. A lot of people were like, "What the hell?" when the news dropped, but Bobby Portis is actually serviceable NBA player as far as what you like when you look at kind of what his role is going to be. If you want him to score off the bench, space the floor a little bit, and grab you some rebounds, that's precisely what he's going to be able to do. If you want to talk about Bobby Portis for a sec.
Yeah, I mean, sure, he's a good solid young player. I don't know, man. I'm waiting to see what the long-term projection is. As long as all these deals are signing our player options, we don't know yet, and that hasn't come up.
This
So
just seems like the salary you need to get these guys at to make them willing to sign shorter term deals, Because like if it's like, oh, if we just want you to sign short term, we're not going to give you, like, they're not going to accept $7 million or something like that. Anything less than $10 million, especially if these players kind of like, they bring something to the game. So I think I can understand it, and I don't hate any of these. I don't personnel wise, I don't hate any of it because I know that like I kind of can carve out their roles right away. Taj Gibson and Bobby Portis, you project to be your front court unit off the bench. Julius Randle is obviously going to be your starting four in an offensively challenged starting five with DSJ and Barrett, Knox, and Robinson. That's who you're going to lean on for a lot of your offense. So I don't hate it. I definitely hate I actually really really like the Randall signing. We can talk about Reggie Bullock as well because I think that's what you were looking for as far as like because the Knicks desperately need shooting. They were just an abysmal 3-point shooting team last season. So getting a guy with a career 3-point percentage of 39% is I think absolutely great. And again, it seems like there's a very clear pattern here that they want to roll with this, and I think these guys are worth adding a couple wins, especially if the young players start to pan out a little bit and they show that some of that star potential that some of them have. Dennis Smith Jr., R.J. Barrett in particular. If those guys really start to come into their own and you really start to look at them as upper tier, upper echelon NBA players, then I think you're really going to be glad you have role players like Bobby Portis and Reggie Bullock on the team. Heading into potentially a really important free agency in 2021.
yeah, sure. I don't know. We'll see, man.
You don't believe in?
I mean, yeah. I mean, as a Knicks fan, you actually look at this like as well as possible. Just on the outside, it's just it's a little. I don't know. It's not what the Knicks projected to look like. So, well, fuck, we'll see. I mean, I'm
They're
not gonna
definitely
tell
not
them that.
taking the traditional approach to being a bad team that kind of is just rebuilding. They're kind of trying to see like, okay, how like because you look at these players, I feel like if a contending team made these signings, I feel like they'd be viewed much more optimistically as far as how those guys would affect any like other teams. It's just like the Knicks are coming off a 17-win season, so the optics of like, oh, these guys are gearing up. It looks like these guys are gearing up for some kind of championship run, when very clearly they aren't. It is kind of jarring to look at, but I think overall, like I think this kind of indicates like, oh, we're kind of all in on RJ Barrett. We're kind of all in on this young core that we have, and these guys are kind of around to supplement them in the meantime. And they're on these kind of deals that are structured in a way as like, oh, if it pans out and they end up making our young guys look good, that might put us in a better position for 2021 free agency, or we can kind of bring these guys back and kind of build on whatever it is you have in these next two seasons that you see from these guys.
Yeah, man. Whatever helps you sleep at night. I
I think I'm being pretty
fucking with
logical
you,
here. I'm
man.
not
Yeah,
trying. I'm not. I think I'm
I
like.
get it.
Yeah. There's George Hill also back to Milwaukee, 3 years,
Yeah, yeah.
$29 million.
Same thing we were talking about the Bucks. Yeah, bringing back the.
Completely outplayed Eric Bledsoe, so like he deserves this. I think he should be their starting point guard. I don't know what you do with Bledsoe going forward, but George Hill pissing me off actually. Like, where was all of this during the 2016 or the 2018 playoffs with when LeBron picked you up, man? Like, what was going on there?
I don't know, man. He the last two seasons have been very good for him.
But yeah, I think scrolling through that appears to be all we got as far as like the notable pickups. Robin Lopez obviously heading to the Bucks. Hazonia going to the
Yeah,
Blazers on a minimum deal, on a 2-year minimum deal with a player option, which was weird. I didn't know we gave player options out to minimum minimum players. Ed Davis, 2-year, $5 million to the Utah Jazz. I would have liked to see the Knicks go after Ed Davis instead of a guy like Taj Gibson, but I understand how the Jazz may be more attractive right now, and why a guy like Ed Davis would be willing to take less money than I think that he's worth to go play for them.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, he's interested. I mean, he's played for the Trailblazers last year. The guy's obviously committed to playing on some good playoff teams.
The Jazz have a guy who doesn't get out rebounded by PJ Tucker anymore now too, so that's good for them.
You like Jazz? Yeah.
All right, I think that's all we really got here, unless there's anyone else you wanted to talk about specifically.
And then when we wake up in the morning when Kawhi signs with the Lakers, it'll all be for fucking naught.
It will all be for nothing because they're going to win the next 4 titles.
Yeah. So,
Like obviously we
I
kind
guess
of
it's good to get this video out now. Raw reactions before fucking Kawhi Leonard goes to the Lakers.
obviously you don't like want that to happen, as far as like we kind of just got the league evened out a little bit, but like goddamn man,
Yeah.
it'd be great to just see LeBron run it up. He's been in this position for his whole career where it's just been like he's so good, but it's never been like the situation has never lined up for him to have a dynasty. Dude, I would love to see just LeBron just absolutely shit on everybody for the next 4 or 5 years.
That motherfucker looked like he wasn't gonna win a ring for the rest of his career. Now he's primed to win four more.
I love it. I love to see it. I love to see it. All right, guys. Thank you as
Yes.
always for listening. Spence, if you want to send us home.
Yeah, fuck it. We'll do another video tomorrow probably. So we just wanted to get day one out of the way because there's probably gonna be a lot more to talk about in day two. So we'll kind of segment it as the kids say.
Thanks so much, guys. Take care of yourselves.
Yeah, don't eat too much cereal.
All right, peace out.